Mohltied guys, and welcome to another video on this channel. In this video I'm gonna provide you a quick but comprehensive guide on everything you need to know before you start your motorbike trip in Vietnam. The first chapter is the legality, whether you are legally allowed to drive a motorbike in Vietnam, yes or no. And the short answer is yes, but nevertheless there are some limitations to this yes, which I'm gonna explain to you right now. If you have a motorbike driver's license from your home country plus the translation, which looks like this, then obviously you are allowed to drive any sized motorbike in Vietnam. If you don't have a driver's license, you are only legally allowed to drive a 50cc scooter in Vietnam, so the tiny scooters. And you might be worried now, is a tiny scooter really gonna get me up and down the mountains? And I also couldn't believe it, but I met a lot of people who went even to like the mountain areas like Ha Giang, and they went there as a solo rider with little luggage and had no problem going up and down the mountains. If you choose to drive a bigger bike, and rental shops usually will never ask you for your driver's license, so you can just rent any type of scooter or motorbike, you of course not riding legally and is on your own risk. There are some areas where you can be almost certain that you will be pulled over, like Ha Giang, like Mui Ne, like Bac Quang. In those kind of areas they will definitely pull you over and you will get in trouble. In other areas you can be more lucky and nobody really does anything. Nevertheless, especially in the recent years, the police got much more strict on law enforcement, also on foreigners. So just bear that in mind. Now we're coming to the next chapter, which is about fines. And in Vietnam, especially in some hostels, you have a lot of rumors of people saying, oh, the maximum fine is 200k Vietnam dong, so it's really not that expensive. You could just break the law and you're not gonna have to pay a lot. But the reality is that since the 1st of January 2025, there is a new decree that raised the fines by a lot. So right now you have to pay a lot of money if you break the law. For example, running a red light or driving without a driver's permit gonna cost you 4 to 6 million Vietnam dong, which is roughly $190. I'm gonna give you guys a full list of the fines below the video, so check that out if you're interested. Also, people often say that all the police is corrupt and that you can just pay your way through it by bribing some police officers. And yes, it's true that Vietnam has a big problem with corruption, but nevertheless there are gonna be just a few police officers, or maybe even none, who are gonna risk losing their job only because accepting a little bribe and making a little bit of money. So be aware that especially the bigger the checkpoint is, the more police officers you have, the less likely they're gonna be willing to accept a bribe, and it's not really as common for like the normal police officers as you would think. Chapter number 3 is about what bike you should get and whether you should buy a bike or just rent one. Buying the bike obviously has the advantage that it's usually much cheaper and is always gonna worth the money if you actually traveling for a longer time in Vietnam, so let's say longer than 1 month. And you're also not having the hassle of buying the bike and having to sell it again. Especially a lot of people are gonna be ending up in this situation where they have to leave the country because they're going back home, or they continue their travels and they kind of have to panic sell the bike. So yeah, maybe makes sense to avoid that sometimes. But then when you go and buy the bike, you should always have someone with you that maybe has a little bit of experience with bikes, or you should go to a place that is very trustworthy. And what's also important is that the bike always comes with a blue card, which looks like this, or in some cases like this. And this is basically just the proof that the bike is not stolen, and it's gonna help you in case you are being pulled over by the police, or also when you want to sell the bike again. So make sure it has one. If you rent the bike, of course it always makes way more sense when you're just using it for like certain areas, if you're just there for like a short time, and you're definitely gonna avoid all the struggle of having to sell the bike again, of having to buy it. But you still have to pay, in most cases you still have to pay if the bike breaks down, so you need to pay for the spare parts because you want to continue your journey. The rental places usually won't cover those costs, except if you have an insurance that you also need to pay extra, which in most cases doesn't really make much sense to get if it's not an expensive motorbike. There's a big difference between the rental shops, and usually it goes like the higher the price, the better the quality of the bike is. But of course you can also look out for very reliable rental shops. So now we're coming to my own bike recommendations for you. If you want to do off-roading or some off-roading, I can recommend you the Honda XR150L or the 190, which is the cheapest version for off-road bikes, but it definitely does the job. A little bit more expensive would be the Yamaha WR155. It is more reliable, but it also costs more. And if you want to have a little bit more power, you're going to go for the CRF250. For touring and semi-off-roading, I can strongly recommend you the Versys 300 or the CB500, which is also doing the job. They are touring bikes. They have a lot of they have side boxes and a top box. You get a lot of space to put stuff, and you can easily travel on the bike with 2 people. And there's also the new version, the NX500, which also is a touring bike. If you want to explore Vietnam on a scooter and you want to go low budget, I can strongly recommend you going on a Wave or an Airblade. Or if you want to go a little bit more expensive, you can also rent an NVX or a Winner. And of course, a lot of times when people think about exploring the country by motorbike, they directly think of the Honda Win, the really old motorbike that is a little bit a piece of shit, but it's a lot of fun to drive. This is the way I experienced Vietnam for the first time as well, and it was so much fun. But they can be pain in the ass sometimes. So now we're coming to the last chapter of this video, which is about some general tips that I have for you. This is very important. Don't compare the distance traveling with the distance from your home country. If, for example, you are supposed to drive 300 kilometers in a day, it's gonna be much longer here than if you drive 300 kilometers somewhere in Europe. Nevertheless, the time duration that you have on Google Maps is usually very reliable, but bear in mind that this is only traveling time without breaks, and those breaks are always needed. And then I also recommend to you to always travel from the south to the north, because in my personal opinion it is only getting more beautiful the further you go up north, and you should definitely always plan in more time for the north. You should also not miss out on the Ho Chi Minh Road. A lot of people tend to always stay to the coastal area in central and south Vietnam, which is definitely worth a visit. But there are also some really nice roads, like for example the Ho Chi Minh Road, which is leading through the countryside a little bit off the coast, and this is definitely worth it. I hope I could provide you a good overview on everything you wanted to find out for your upcoming adventure on a motorcycle in Vietnam. If you still have some questions that haven't been answered yet, please feel free to comment below, and I will try my best to answer them as well. If you still don't feel like you want to put yourself through and you are a little bit worried about driving on your own in Vietnam, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, because I'm also offering guided motorcycle tours around the north of Vietnam, and this is gonna be a lot of fun. In any case, I wish you guys a lot of fun on your upcoming trip in Vietnam, and always ride safe, explore as much as you can, and enjoy the beautiful views all over the country. And if you want to have more Vietnam content, some random missions, some traveling content, some secret spots, and some insider knowledge, then please like, share, and subscribe to my channel, and see you guys in the next video. Mohltied!